So one of the things about training camp and preseason that's interesting, right? Because we always talk about the big names. And I think a lot of us are excited to see what Deshaun Watson's going to bring to the table, what Amari Cooper is going to look like in the Cleveland Browns uniform. And more than likely, we're going to get an opportunity to see what those players look like. Hell, even Jacoby Brissett is somebody that everybody is interested in seeing what that's going to look like in the Cleveland Browns. But I think there are other players here, less notable players, but players who are going to play in a very important role here or may not play a very important role here, that we're going to get a lot of intrigue and a lot of information about what their year is going to look like by looking at this training camp. So let's go through this list. Also, please don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. Also, shout out to the patreon.com dog check tier members. I appreciate y'all. Please thank you for everybody who clicks that link and supports the show that way. It is a massive help. Now let's talk about the players to watch in training camp. First guy, shouldn't be a surprise, Perion Winfrey. And I think with all of these players, I'm going to have a big overlooming question about these players in this time, right? With Perion Winfrey, the big question with Perion is, which Perion are the Browns getting? Are they getting the guy that you can look at on his tape at Oklahoma that I don't think it justified him falling all the way to the fourth, but it might have justified him being like a third-round pick where he was in and out of games. He wasn't necessarily consistent. Pad level was always an issue. And he kind of, especially in the run game, had the Larry Ogunjobi problem, right, where he would go upfield and just kind of lose where he is on the field and not be great in run situations, right? There is that version of Perion that some people are dead set think that's going to be him. There's the other Perion that's what people saw at the Senior Bowl when he was put at a true three-tech. Remember, at Oklahoma, I think he said he was lined up at zero. It definitely looked like a zero tech. But in the Senior Bowl, he was lined up at three-tech, which is what he's going to play in the Browns 4-3 system. So if he looked great there at the Senior Bowl at three-tech, and he did, right? At the Senior Bowl, he looked like the best player on the field. Devontae Wyatt was there, didn't look as good as Perion Winfrey. A lot of first-round picks on the offensive line were there. Did not look as good as Perion Winfrey did at the Senior Bowl. And the question has to be asked, why was he that good at the Senior Bowl? Was it because he just turned it on and needed to play that well just so he can get drafted, and that's something we're never going to see again from him? Was it a flash, or was this an example of what kind of player he could be if he's put at the natural three-tech spot that he was born to play in? I think it's more of the latter than it is the former. I think who he was at the Senior Bowl is probably indicative of what you can get out of Perion if you put him at three-tech, specifically in situations where he's not going to be forced to eat a ton of double teams since he's not the largest three-tech in the world. But if he gets those one-on-ones, he's athletic and quick enough to get downfield. And I think he's smart enough as a player to be able to adjust to run stuffs, because when he was at three-tech, he was pretty good in the Senior Bowl against the run, at least at the practices and somewhat in the games. It's hard to judge based off of the Senior Bowl game itself, but the practices, he was phenomenal against the run and phenomenal attacking the quarterback, obviously. He won Senior Bowl MVP. So that's the question with Perion. Are they getting the guy? Is he going to be closer at his natural position than when he looked like when he played out of position at Oklahoma for a bunch of games? Or is he the guy that we saw that weekend he was put in a good position, the position for him at the Senior Bowl? That's why Perion fell, I think, ultimately, right? Is because there's that contrast between how different those two players look like given the two different situations. But I think there's a lot to believe in if you translate his tape and you look at it from the perspective of somebody who should be a three-tech. But that's just my thoughts on that one. A.J. Green III is also another player I think everybody should kind of peek at during camp, because this is a guy who is undrafted. This is a guy who kind of has flown under the radar the last couple of years, but he's moved up the depth chart every year, right? Last year, he got some considerable playing time. He was kind of the backup boundary guy outside of Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward. He's versatile enough to where the Browns feel like he can compete in the slot corner spot. He's good in zone. He's good in man. He's overall good corner, and he's a pretty good special teamer. And he's somebody who, if you look at his Pro Football Focus grade, he had like an 83 Pro Football Focus grade, not enough to count towards like the whole lot of players, so it wasn't a qualifying sample, but it is a interesting and intriguing sample nonetheless for a team that likes to run out a bunch of corners. So if he's versatile, if he can play at that similar high level, and then all of a sudden now you could throw out John Johnson, a quality DB, Grant Delpit, you hope who's going to be a quality DB. He looked like one for most parts last year, but we'll see. And then you have Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward, and if you could throw out AJ Green there as another good DB, then you all of a sudden you have 5 really solid corners that you can always go with. Or you could throw MJ Emerson out there who's going to be competing for that slot role, and you can have a lot of versatilities. And what we've learned over the last couple of years, especially in defensive back rooms, is that you can never have enough because DBs just get injured all the time. So the depth there is going to be important. And speaking of the depth, that brings me to the next player on this list, which is Greedy Williams. Because as much as AJ Green is going up the depth chart and his roles are growing at the expense of Greedy Williams, that is coming, right? Because Greedy has found himself as a man without an island on this team right now. And the reason I say that is when Greedy was drafted, he was drafted by John Dorsey, I believe. He was a Dorsey pick, I believe, 2019, right? And he was drafted to be the guy next to Denzel Ward. That was the idea. We're going to move Greedy, put him on the other side of Denzel, and we'll have 2 good boundary corners. Well, Greedy had an up and down rookie year, missed almost the entire 2020 season with nerve damage, which I think even trickled into a little bit of 2021. And kind of as he took less playing time, as he was unable to get out there, AJ Green played well. AJ Green took, snaps from him. And now he's in this position to where they drafted Greg Newsome in the meantime. AJ Green has emerged a little bit, and they drafted MJ Emerson in the 3rd round this year. So if you're looking at Greedy Williams, where is he going to be? Right? Like, he seems like he might be the odd man out in this entire situation because there just seems like there's no place to put him. You're not going to put him next to on the opposite side of Denzel Ward because you already have Greg Newsome. And I think there is a portion of this coaching staff that would prefer, if you have Newsome on the inside, to put AJ Green out there because AJ Green is more versatile. You can run both man and zone with him, whereas Greedy, really good man corner, struggles in zone at times, right? So there is that issue with Greedy. And then also, since he struggles in zone, he's not the most physical corner in the world, right? This has always been the knock on Greedy coming out of college. You can't really put him in the slot or at safety. So where are you going to put Greedy Williams, right? You don't want him to be the backup boundary guy because, necessarily he's not that guy. He's not versatile enough to be that guy. You want some versatility out there. He has the skill set to be a number 1 corner, but he's not really useful unless he is the best corner on the team, and he might be the 5th best corner on this team, so it wouldn't make sense to put him where you would put Denzel Ward, where you can get away with a guy who's a little bit less versatile. But that's the thing with Greedy. I just don't know where they put him. I don't see the spot that's there for him, right? He's not somebody who thinks he's going to thrive in special teams and do all the dirty work like AJ. So we'll see. He's going to have to go through a transformation during this camp because I think he's fighting, I don't know, for his NFL life. I think he'll get picked up by another team if he gets cut by the Browns this year. But he's definitely fighting for his future in Cleveland this training camp. And it's been a couple years we've been saying that about Greedy. So I hope the best for him. I hope more corners that can play well, the better. But he's somebody I would watch because he's starting to look like a man without an island. Next player is JOK. The reason I want people to look at JOK is not because I'm interested in if he's going to be good or not. I think JOK is clearly good. But the reason I'm interested in JOK is more or less, where are they going to put him right? Like, are they going to have him line up in a bunch of different spots? Because last year they really only had him line up at the will linebacker position. So this year, will they have him, move around a little bit more, do some of the JOK stuff that we saw him do at Notre Dame? I know purposely they limited what they wanted to do with him just because they wanted him to just learn how to be a linebacker in the NFL before they overwhelmed him with everything else, which was a smart play. He was really good last year. But now I want to see in training camp, hey, do we see him roaming a lot more? Do we see him going to different positions? Do we see him lining up in some funky spots here in the preseason here and there to get some reps? Like, that's the interesting thing to watch with JOK. The next player I'm going to talk about is David Bell, which is, hey, can he be the number 2? There is going to be a massive competition on this roster for the wide receiver that can emerge as the number 2 guy next to Amari Cooper. And we know with this wide receiving room, it's not going to be a ton of room outside the top 3 guys, right? Like, it's not like the Browns throw the ball on this offense a ton. With Watson, obviously, they'll throw the ball a little bit more than they did with Mayfield or obviously with Brissett. But given that Watson's probably going to be suspended for at least a quarter of this season, there's going to be a limited amount of space for the wide receivers to operate in. So who's going to emerge as that second guy? David Bell has a chance to do that. His mini camp was pretty good, but we've seen people have good mini camps and it not translate. So we'll see with him. In that same vein, you could throw in Donovan Peoples-Jones. And the last guy I'm going to talk about as somebody to watch during training camp, Jerome Ford. And the reason I want to look at Jerome Ford during training camp is he could make this running back situation very, 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 very interesting. One, I don't think he's going to get cut regardless just because he's a 4th-round pick. The Browns, I don't think they've cut a single draft pick yet since they've gotten Andrew Berry. I would doubt Jerome Ford's going to be the first guy, a 4th-round pick that they drafted this year. I would be surprised if that were the case. So I think he's going to make the team. And we already know Dearness is probably, like, if Dearness makes it to September on this roster, he's going to be on the team, right? He's not getting cut. And then obviously Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb more of a lock than Kareem Hunt. Probably going to make this team, but both are pretty reasonable locks to make this team, which brings you to Jerome Ford and Demetric Felton. Demetric Felton, who had some good moments last year, and Jerome Ford, who is a 4th-round pick. And we're already at 3 with the main 3 guys I mentioned. You add those 2, and that's 4 and 5. And no team keeps 5 running backs, right? Like, that was weird when the Browns kept 4 last year. So what are you going to do at that position? And if Jerome Ford shows that he's good enough to where you can't really stash him on the practice squad, which he's a 4th-round pick, let's be real, you're not stashing him on the practice squad, I don't know what you do, right? Because if he has a great camp, you got to keep him on the roster. That's 4 running backs. This is the time for the Brian Windhurst, what's going on with that running back room meme? You know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But Jerome Ford can make this thing very interesting because if it looks like the Browns could be 5 deep at running back, teams are going to be circling around the Browns roster when it comes for the waiver wire like vultures, because I don't think you're going to get that much trade value out of your 4th or 5th running back. Or even if you trade Kareem Hunt, I don't think the trade value is there for Kareem Hunt or even Dearness Johnson because, the teams had an opportunity to get Dearness Johnson. Nobody tried to sign him. So I don't think the value is out there for a trade. So I don't know what the Browns are doing with this running back room, but it's definitely interesting. But that's the stuff I think is going to be interesting to watch in training camp. What are you excited to watch during training camp? Let me know in the comment section down below. But guys, thank y'all for watching. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.